Unit heading up to the code 3 chase. Suspect was last reported southbound.
If anyone's going to be calling the police, it's going to be me.
Greetings. I'm Brian Tuscan, host of Cop to Corporate. Today's show will focus on life after law enforcement and becoming an entrepreneur, your own boss. Our special guest is retired NYPD detective Desmond, also known as Des Smyth, and he started a small company after identifying a problem and created a unique solution, and ultimately started a multimillion-dollar global company called SecureWatch24. Desmond, welcome to Cop to Corporate. Please tell us your story from starting off as a beat cop, working your way up, all the way to being the president and founder of a large corporation.
Well, thank you, Brian. That's a very a flattering and generous introduction, and I appreciate it. The probably the genesis for the starting the company was that I knew, like a lot of cops do, that when I retire, the income is not going to be enough to support my family, whether their children going to college or looking to buy vacation homes. I mean, you'll have a pension and you'll have medical benefits, but life is going to go on, and half of us are under 50 years old, which is not really time to put your feet up and lay in the backyard. So it was really motivated on how I was going to provide for the family after my law enforcement career. I knew I did not want to spend more than the 20 years that was required by the NYPD. I was a detective in the last 10 years of my career. I was a detective in several units and divisions, and most of us will accept there is a burnout rate. There's a reason that there was a 20-year retirement, because there is a burnout rate, and we've all run into these guys who've been on the job for like 35 years, and you wonder, God bless you, but I don't know how you did this for 35, 40 years, because I couldn't have done it. It was just too taxing for me, and plus it takes away from your family time. So I think part of the success was I had met some guys who were going to school at about the 10-year mark in my career, and one was going to be a lab technician, and the other one was working on an accounting degree, and I worked with these guys, and they would leave work and head to school to try and get their classes that night, and I was impressed. And one guy had 10 years to go like me, and I'm like, wow, 10 years. He says, yeah, I got it all figured out. I will have my CPA at the end of 10 years. And then he kind of said, well, what'll you have, Des? And I realized at the end of 10 years, I'll have a pension if I don't get in the game. So I started going to school. I was going to be a teacher at this point. I said, I don't want to lift sheetrock or do anything physical. Let's use our heads. And New York has a great college, a lot of great colleges, but they had a college, John Jay, which really catered to law enforcement and police sciences and political sciences. And so I figured out that at the 10-year mark, I'd have my master's and I'd be out of that school. But as we know, plans have a way of going sideways, even though they sound like a great plan. In the middle of that, and guys will appreciate this, I think, out there, guys and girls. I had a young family. I was so distracted. I studied poorly for the sergeant's exam, and I actually failed the sergeant's exam. And they're not going to have another one for 2 years. So my ability to make more money is now even more hampered. And my wife was talking about going back to work, but the kids were small. So I said, look, I have a background in avionics and aircraft mechanics. I have my A&P, for those who know anything about it. Airframe and power plant licenses are the two licenses connected with servicing airplanes. One's all engines and one's all the other related systems, and then you have an avionics. And I had got those licenses as a young man through a great trade school system here in New York City, and I loved it. But the industry collapsed in 1976 with the Arab oil embargo, so that career went under. I started going to school. I was at NYU at the time. This is all pre-police work. I'm still a young man, and NYU was even an expensive school back then. And I run into a Xerox technician, oddly enough, and he says, Xerox will pay for up to 8 credits a semester, regardless of where you go. You should go and apply. So I went down and I applied for the job, and I got the job, and I was monstrously overqualified. So it was So I looked really smart to them, but the problem was the guidance system on a 747 is a lot more complicated than a Xerox machine, and I didn't want to break their hearts that their technology was pretty easy compared to what I'd studied for. So I excelled, and I went 4 years with the Xerox Corporation, and they lose their patent, a 20-year patent, and they literally collapse. Kodak, IBM all eats their money, and they're cutting back, and we were taking giant cuts in salary. And I said, "The heck with this! I'm going back to school. I have some money." So I go back to school, and I took a police department test. I have a brother who was just a hero of a cop. I mean, he's one of those cops that has there's so many medals they're falling off his uniform and around his, and because he loved police work. He's my kid brother, and he always wanted to be a cop. And I took the test because my Irish mother, God rest her soul, said, "Just take the test just in case." So I took the test to make her happy rather than one Saturday, rather than lie to her. And I had already refused. The police department had called me up twice, and I had said, "No, I'm not interested right now." And they rotate you forward on the list. And it just so happened that I was out of work and thinking about what I'm going to do next. And they call again and they tell me, "This is the last shot. Either you're going in or you're not." And I was 26 years old. So I go into the police department and I said, "I'll go through the academy and I'll get in shape and I'll quit because I don't really want to be a cop." And then I finished the academy. I get out. I'm like the old dog. I'm 27 getting out of the academy. And I said, "Well, you got to say you did it. So I'll do it for 6 months and then I'll quit because I want to be, I don't want to be a cop. I want to make a lot of money and all that other nonsense." And so my standard joke is that every 6 months for 20 years, I was quitting the police department. But an interesting thing happened. I ended up in a narcotics division in the Bronx, and it is it is crazier. Fact is wilder than fiction, and we were actually trying to place undercovers in apartments for these narcotics investigations, and we literally go down to the police academy and find, we have a list. I need a Dominican female. I need a Chinese male. I need, you go through this whole list and see who's coming in. And the deal they offer them is that it will delay your academy entry. You've never been registered as a cop. You have no payroll. We're going to put you in these apartments. We're going to give you money. There's a fake company. There's actually, there's a company paying the rent. And we just want you to go around the bars and spend money and gather intel for about 6 weeks. And we'll keep you in pairs. Don't get into any trouble. Don't do anything silly. We just want the intel. And so I was working closely with these owners, and they said, "Listen, I have 10 more buildings. I have 5 more buildings. When you're done with this, I have a problem here." But our resources were so limited. Taped VCRs were out back then. The Sony things with 24 hours. Now, anybody in law enforcement knows that 24 hours is not really a lot of time to gather intel. And we also know that nobody ever changed the tapes. So they were always rotten. Half the time they weren't even there. Most of the cameras were broken. In fact, that was a great way to identify the young rookie detective, because he would get all excited about seeing a camera and everybody would go, "That camera's not working." And you go, "How do you guys know?" We'd go, "Because they never work." And so I'm trying to figure out how to get more intel, and these DVRs are just coming out. This is like 1999, 2000, and the first digital recorders are coming out. And if you remember, Brian, there were like hundreds of them. I think the Japanese and the Koreans were making like 50 or 60 models. Everything was Windows based. I think it was Windows 95, for God's sakes. And but there was 14 days of storage on these things. And to anybody trying to figure out what's going on in a building or a lobby, that's a lifetime of data for you to cull through. So I started convincing the owners to put these in, and then I started putting them in myself, because it was complicated to get these things to work with the new cable lines that were coming in, brand new Time Warner and Cablevision, and most of the old CCTV guys hadn't a clue how to hook up networks. So once again, I got to drag all that old knowledge and bring it back into the forefront again of my current career. And I said, "All right, I'm going to wire these things up, and then we're going to monitor them, because I want to make sure that I'm not coming there and this camera's been down for a week and nobody told us. So we'll watch them remotely, because I can watch them through my laptop." And And I figured my wife and I were thinking we were charging, here's the numbers I'll give you. This is how wild it gets. It's kind of like Microsoft, Brian, $50 a software. Who knew it was going to be billions of computers that were going to put that software on their system. So I said $20 a month per camera. We'll check the cameras every day. And I said to my wife, well, imagine we might have 100 cameras, and that's not a bad side income. And I'll warranty their DVR for another $30 a month. And so we started doing this little business. And it's a little difficult to do inside the NYPD because they don't like you running independent operations while you're a detective in the unit. But one owner talked to another and said, man, I really like that. And can I get on that program? Can I get on that program? And so I'm living this wild double life where I'm driving in to narcotics by night. I was doing the late shift to get the steady hours. I had a Ford Aerostar that was gutted with a sleeping bag and blankets in the back so that I could find some place to actually rest between police work and then going to install cameras. It got so crazy that I couldn't monitor all the cameras. There was hundreds of them, 800, 500 cameras. I forget where it initially went to. We're using subcontractors to install them. And I said to my wife, I can't watch all these cameras. They're going to realize I'm not really living up to the contract. And how about you let me use the girls? Now, my daughters were 6 and 8 years old. She said, what are you talking about? I said, after they finish their homework, I'll give them a little spreadsheet and they go through and they let me know which cameras are working and which cameras are not. So she reluctantly agreed. She's like, what are they going to see? I said, they're not going to see anything. I just want them to see if they're on or not. And so anyway, within, 6 months, we're at 3,000 cameras. And it's absolute chaos. And my wife is like, look, the girls can't do this anymore. They got to get they're up at night checking cameras in Manhattan for you. This is nuts. And I would give them a nickel a camera and they'd make little notations like, Daddy, I think they're selling drugs. I'd see in these notations. I still have these log books because I think they're hysterical. And she says, you got to pay people to do this. So I said, okay. And I remember it was heartbreaking. My girls were so sad. They got fired. They lost their job. They were crying. And and then it just accelerated at an enormous rate. And what we had inside the company, we had a great team of guys. We had law enforcement guys. We had technology people. And it wasn't like I had watched the technology companies. We've all been there. They try to sell stuff. And I get it. You're brilliant at your technology, but how does this really apply to the application? And Brian, cops are the toughest client you'll ever have because if it isn't easy, they will throw it right back at you. This I already broke the rule. This is BS. I'm not going to use it. And so I said, look, this thing has to be. If it's pointless for this, the question I ask all the time when I see technology being sold? I want to know how this makes anything safe. I understand it's a camera and I get it's a locked door with an access control. I get all that, but where is the real safety quotient coming from in it? And this early misnomer that if I put a camera up, that people are going to be safe. Well, how many videos do we have of people being attacked with cameras on camera? I mean, there's hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of videos of actual incidents where someone didn't care that there was a camera. And so I would say to these landlords and their supers and their managers that, listen, this needs to get to the people who actually can affect the criminal element in this building. I need to stream this to local law enforcement, to the units that need it, the warrants units, the school safety units, the narcotics units, the squad itself that needs to find out. And so we worked up an arrangement between the NYPD. At the time, it was Commissioner Ray Kelly, and where I was, of course, now retired, so I could actually engage in this. And we said, listen, you will have access under certain conditions to go in and remove the video from these machines if you're using it for, I think there were 12 or 14 different, missing child, elderly, narcotics, open investigation, crime in progress. And then it really began to take off, and it began to affect the crime stats in the buildings dramatically. I mean, dramatically. We had a building in the Bronx on Gun Hill Road that when I was a young cop, you didn't want to go in there by yourself because the courtyard was just chaos. There was two factions of drug dealers selling different drugs, and there were probably 80 apartments in this whole complex. It was just chaos. After we put the cameras in and let the narcotics teams do a couple of raids and shut down the two key apartments, the buildings radically. No, lighting is also an issue too. I tell people, listen, it's got to look safe. So we used to call it the Yankee Stadium treatment. Let's get some bright lights up here. Let's get the cameras, and then I promise you, nobody wants to deal drugs or do nefarious stuff in front of lights and cameras. And if you have your local law enforcement assisting you on it, it really does work. So one building, I never forgot the numbers. This building was getting 21 on an average of 21 calls for the police on a monthly basis. And that's not even counting the ambulance aided calls for assistance. After the system went in and we had the first set of warrants were executed, the building went down to 2 calls a month. And my daughters were still monitoring at the time. And you'll like this story, Brian. My daughters were monitoring the building, and this is there was an old fountain in the middle that now the guy had put flowers in it. And as I'm at the dinner table, they're checking their cameras, and my 6-year-old turns to me and says, "Daddy, I want to go here." And I'm trying to think of where she's talking about, and I'm like, "What do you see?" And I see the building, and I can't even recognize it because there's mothers and old ladies with like lawn chairs, and there's little girls. What she saw was little girls riding around on their bicycles now in the courtyard because all the drug dealers were gone, and now it was a place that they could play again. So that's those are some of the things that we knew we were onto something successful, and an example of it was we went up to 22,000 cameras and 2,100 locations, apartment complexes. Now I won't do the math for everybody out there, but do $20 a month per camera, and then do $30 a month per building, and you'll see that's a bad amount of money to be coming into a guy who's in the narcotics division. That can raise a lot of eyebrows, but it was there, and it worked, and we modeled it in other cities, and to me it was so basic, and I think the most cops realize it's just so basic. Just give the tools. These are tools, and then. My dad was an Irish trained immigrant carpenter, and he had a great set of hands. And as his eldest son, when he passed away, I inherited these hand tools that he had from the time he was in his apprenticeship. And I can take these tools out of that bag, Brian, and I can spread them across the table, and I can look at them and I can touch them, but I will never build the cabinets that my father built, or the shelves, or the stuff. I don't have those hands. Those tools needed to be in the hands of that professional. I feel the same way about security technology. We hand this advanced technology, we give them to landlords and superintendents, and we say, here you go, you're safe. They don't know what to do with those tools. They have no idea. And they're not safe because someone can rip a camera down and throw it through the front door. Now you've got a locksmith and a new camera has got to go up. It had nothing to do with security. What created the security for the New York City region for us was the signs we put up. We put up these 16-inch graffiti-proof signs that said SW24 in our company logo with just Secure Watch 24 underneath. Now, every bad guy in the city knew that there was a good possibility that this system was connected with the NYPD. In fact, I think they thought we were like BlackRock and a subdivision of the NYPD working out there. And we would put the signs up. The subcontractors would just put the signs up, and the whole courtyard would clear. They'd call sometimes and say, "Look, there's a lot of bad-looking guys out here. My guys are nervous working." And I'd say, "See what happens if you just put a couple of signs up and let me know what happens." And they'd call back and they said, "This is kind of weird, but everybody's gone." So that was the power of sort of technology collaboration and nothing, no heavy hitting, nothing exotic, just cops being smart. And
Des, that's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing. And just for our listeners, just to clarify, because being an entrepreneur, and you touched on it, while gainfully employed for a government agency, there's a fine line. There's sometimes even a gray line if they allow moonlighting. And I've worked in two different departments, and there were a lot of officers, not a lot, but a few that had some sort of side action that was going on that was cleared. So if you could just walk through, as you started one as a second job, which a lot of people have two jobs to make ends meet. How did you walk that fine line with NYPD, and then eventually decided I'm going to take my 20 and retire, and then build this wonderful company from the ground up?
All right. My pension is safe, so I can speak freely at this point in my life. So, I was over a line, and it wasn't intentional. It just gathered this momentum, and one day, no exaggeration, one day I get a call. My wife was running the back office, and I would go in on a Monday, and they wouldn't see me till Wednesday because I'd be out looking at subcontractors, and it was so crazy that the cops out there will appreciate it. We worked in an abandoned a Budweiser plant that we thought was like secret, but every bad guy in the world knew that the narcotics guys were in there. They'd sometimes come there with their vouchers looking for their shoes or their belt or something. We like, how does everybody know about this? So it wasn't very secret. And I would and the lounge, cops aren't like firemen. Our lounges are a mess. Nobody gives a damn. And so I had to go. I would be exhausted after. I try to get some sleep before my tour started, I think at 9 p.m. at night. And I put a little note on my partner's desk. At the time, it was Mike Gonzalez, who still is a very big part of my company today. I consider him another founding member. And I put a little post-it and say, I'm in the van sleeping. Let me know if we're going out. Because as you know, you don't always go out. Sometimes you're doing a lot of paperwork and background checks, and you're getting ready for the warrant. And you really had to do a lot of work before you could even touch a door in New York City. But I still remember times when the door would open and the banging on my van, and the door would open, and a whole team would be standing there with bunker gear and helmets, and your entry right and your entry left, and I'm in half a fog going to do a warrant in some housing complex or something, and at one time I was so out of it that I'm getting ready to do the entry, and things are, we got the tools you put on the door, the hydraulic presses that before you boom them, we separate the hinges a little bit, and then the boom, and I turned to the guy opposite me because I'm door right and he's door left, and I said, "Whose warrant is this?" And he says, "You effing idiot! It's your warrant." so that's how crazy life was getting in this double world, and I was trying to keep it quiet because I just didn't want to. I had 2 years to go. I had about 18 months left. And I was so determined to I was not leaving without my pension. I had spent, all those years working in the toughest parts of the city, whether it be the South Bronx, whether it be East New York or Harlem. I was getting my pension. And I meet a deputy commissioner. I won't name him, but a great guy. I meet a deputy commissioner about 6 months after I retire, Brian. It might have even been an event I was at with you down in Vegas or Houston or God knows where we were. And I said to him, "Oh my God," I said, "it was so hard keeping that a secret." He says, "You thought that was a secret? That was the worst secret in the police department, Des." He said, every time internal affairs wanted to get involved, they said, "Listen, every squad in the city is using those cameras. He's going to retire. If he doesn't retire, we'll get in the meantime, just leave him alone." So that's kind of where it was.
Hey, Des, I think what your story will help other officers that are walking that fine line of being a entrepreneur while being a cop. And I think now as we move forward in today's age, you really have to keep things separate and clean. So there's probably some people listening here that have to decide, I have 10 years. I'm not going to make that pension. I'm going to go for it. What kind of advice would you give if someone leaves without a pension to realize their dream, but the risks they take, there's no reward without risk, right? The
Yes.
bigger risk, the bigger rewards. And as you explain how successful your company is, what kind of advice would you give an officer thinking, I need to leave now. I'm not going to make it to my pension, but I have this burning desire to be an entrepreneur?
All right, it's a great question, Brian, and I've answered that question in the past, and I've advised guys on this. It depends where you are in your career, right? If you're like, I was about 4 years, 3.5 to 4 years from my retirement when this thing sort of took off. And like I told you, I would say when it was getting really crazy, I would say all I wanted to do was be a teacher. I don't know how I got here, that kind of thing. And but it was moving, and it was looking promising, and I was tempted to jump, and I was doing the best I could because I really couldn't. Everybody that worked for me could actually work legitimately and fill out off-duty employment paperwork, but owning it was the only one that couldn't do it. Was me as the owner, and so I was at a risk. And my wife and I sat down and we accepted that. Listen, if they come knocking and they need me to quit, how do you feel about that? She says, well, now that this thing has got the direction and the momentum it's going, I think it's it's worth the risk we take. As if they tell you have to leave, you leave. Now, if you have 10 years on the job, if I had 10 years on the job and this started, there is no way that I would work both of those jobs. I would not sacrifice the time with my family. I would not put myself through that stress and anxiety, and really go back to the first one. I'll go back to the first one. Building the company, my daughters missed time with their father. They missed several years because it was 2 full-time jobs. And I would say to those, make a decision. If you've got, do you want to do another 15 years of this? Do you want to do 10 years of this? If the answer in your head is no, then get out and follow and chase whatever you're chasing. And know that, like you said, Brian, there's no success without risk. And by the way, the other part of that is hard work. There's no way to beat the hard work. And, so many people want that easy ride. And so many people say things. This is the one that drives me crazy. Boy, Des, you were lucky. You had it just right. Luck. What are you talking about? Luck is when opportunity and effort actually get together and work. So I don't know about luck. Luck was, what was lucky is that I had parents who gave me a good work ethic, and I had a technical background that somehow came into use 15 years later in my law enforcement background. And I was able to follow and understand quickly where maybe others wouldn't be, and see the combinations that people couldn't be. I mean, we get blindsided in the industry, our own business. Cops will only see, the guard, the physical presence, how to move it. I remember trying to do virtual guard programs and bringing in guard companies and doing full demos about how we can light up the entire building and your guard can stay at the station. Meanwhile, we'll remotely have all 50 floors in this property. And even if the guard leaves the station, he can go upstairs and we'll take over the front desk and make sure that the front desk is secured. I do this whole thing, and the 2 guys in the guard business, retired law enforcement, look at me and go, I don't get it. What's this got to do with guards? I wanted to call both of them Lenny and Squiggy. Get out of my office. So some people just don't see it, but even if you're not going to quit, start working on something. I just met an officer recently who did part-time work for us, and now he went for his physician's assistant's license while he was a detective, and he was in counterterrorism. So, and now he's a physician's assistant working a full second career, making tremendous money and doing what he loves to do. So, the other thing, Brian, you know this too, you've seen it. Cops have a tendency to really underrate their value. I don't think they realize how intuitive they really are, and how that works in the sales world, where you can read a room a little bit better than most. I did a period of a debriefing where we'd get called in, and the guy's not giving up any information, and they had a debriefing team that would go around, and we were able to make deals on the scene. We kind of had a whole district attorney unit behind us. And here's the 3-time loser getting ready to finish his bid, and you have the keys to the door, but you want information. And we'd have books of photos, so you'd learn to read people and who's going to break and who's not. And there's no science to it, but I found it a great tool in business, because I knew if I was talking about something and they were losing interest, I could tell by the body language that I've got to get off this and I've got to appeal to something a little more direct. And I think that's a skill set that came from law enforcement, not from anything else.
Absolutely. Des, that point you brought up about undervaluing what you do as a police officer or law enforcement, the transferable skills, there are many. They're just defined as different skills, such as a detective, you're really a project manager, right? You're a PM. There's a beginning, middle, and end. It's just how you articulate that. So as we wrap up this amazing interview, could you show our listeners that amazing granite table that you have in your conference room, and give a little history behind it, and then we'll wrap it up.
I knew you were going to go there. We are actually we have 2 facilities. We closed down our Manhattan office in March at the start of the COVID, and we moved everybody over to a facility that's literally about 5 miles as the crow flies from Manhattan in New Jersey by the Meadowlands. And so it's a 26,000 foot warehouse that we converted into a command and R&D center. All our trucks are there, and we had plenty of parking. So we said, listen, let's all retreat here. We can certainly spread out everybody enough. We can better manage our social distancing with COVID. So we've been at this facility now since it began, and it's really become our home. And you can dress down, as you can see. We don't need to have the Manhattan look anymore, which I love. But this was built. I guess it's coming up on 9 years now. It was built as a working showcase, because it's overbuilt for its image, which is what it was designed to do. So because we would have mayors and state senators and chiefs of different law enforcement departments come through, and we wanted to impress them. Nobody wants to see a little guy in a corner working on a monitor and tell him that's he's monitoring 100 buildings. So we put up a big screen, and we gave them their IMAX theater on steroids. And so I'll do like a little walk around now with so this is the conference room. You want to tell the table, this conference room table? This is a classic cop. This is a classic cop story, folks. Cops, there's stuff out there, and there's no point in it going to waste. If it's out there and it's free, it's ours. We're going to grab it. So I had a client who had a tower in Manhattan, a 50-story building, and he and a French bank had come in, and they were there no more than 6 months. They had fully furnished the whole place. They had put up offices and two stories in this building, and within 6 months, the feds were taking them all out in handcuffs. I don't know what was going on. Nobody knew, but they were all indicted for whatever reason, and all this stuff was sitting up there for about a year and a half. And when we were building this, we called it the Fusion Center. When we were building this, we said, maybe they've got file cabinets and chairs and desks and stuff we can take. And he said, "You're welcome to it all. Just get it out. I got to clear the floors. We want to bring in new tenants." And I go into this room and I see this amazing conference table, which I'll show you guys a quick look at it. It's 35 feet long. It probably seats God knows how many people, 40. I don't know if this camera's doing it any justice or not, Brian, but it's it's just a massive table. And I wanted to just typical cop. I said, "I'll take the table." And he said, "You're taking it all, or you take nothing." So we actually disassembled this table. It's all Italian marble. Some of the pieces weigh 500 pounds. And so we have this gigantic yacht of a table in our conference. and the architect was upset because he had to redesign the whole monitoring station now because I had found a table. but I said I really want this table. So let me and then this was on the other side of this table is the if you guys can see, there's this glass wall that's got that electronic hazing, and if we hit the button, we take the hazing out, and then you have the fusion center, which is in here, which is the monitoring station, and I'll walk you guys in, and we'll come in. So this stays kind of lit, and we use this board rather sparingly. As you can see, this is a 12 by 42 foot wall that's part of our sort of dog and pony. Although when there's an active scenario going on, the supervisor will bring it up on the screen so that everybody can get a better view and more people can get involved in the solution. There's Pat trying to bring the wall up because it's been asleep for about a week. So, and he's stressing right now because I asked him to light the wall, and it's not easy to bring her back up. This is a hang on. This is a full data center. This has its own power and air conditioning and redundant units, and what this does is, can you hear me with the noise?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Okay, so what this does is we take the video we have a product called Secure Watchman. It's an analytic that looks out for loitering and other incidents in buildings, and then we offload the video and store it for the clients. And then if they have a court case, we'll actually give them a retired investigator who can go down and testify on behalf of what happened in the building or work with the law enforcement to help them out. So most of this is just storing. Some of it's steady feeds, and some of it is just events. And we keep them for 36 months because that's the New York State's limit on how long someone can sue you for slipping in their building, which is like incredible. I fell in your building 3 Christmases ago, and now my neck hurts. You actually can go to court with that. So in this crazy town. So let me go back to the now the irony of the whole thing, Brian, is that is we now have municipal contracts, our government portfolio, and that was built by an amazing guy that you've met, John Colgan. John Colgan was the chief of counterterrorism for the NYPD and actually built the whole JOC and the real-time crime center. And he was called out of retirement right after 9/11 by Ray Kelly to help restructure what had fallen apart. I'm a 9/11 first responder. In fact, I was on the investigative team for 3 months because I was an aircraft mechanic. Dear God, don't ask me what that has to do with anything, but I was there, and John was brought back in to redo our command and control. Old news, I guess, for a lot of the cops out there, but when Tower 7 fell down, it took the entire NYPD's emergency command and control, as well as the ESU. We had foolishly put all our eggs in one basket, and that basket was told to be moved after the attempt in '93, and they didn't move it. And that tower actually fell not from the initial impact and destruction of the twins, but it fell because of the fires that raged underneath it, and it had 2 5,000-gallon diesel fuel tanks that ignited because, like a lot of buildings in the city, they have no basement. So, because there's trains and things underneath. So, this building's 5th floor had diesel fuel tanks that caught and then melted the steel. And thank God we were able to clear it out. Nobody was in, but the whole thing fell into the existing pile of rubble. So it was, and that was a 52-story building. So it's quite a sight. I don't know how much of this is relevant, but
it's very relevant. And I think what you have shown is to the Cop to Corporate followers, how your dream and experiences of previous work in aviation helped you come up with a business model and a business idea. And another thing you brought up that made a great point is your discussions with your wife, your spouse, right? So anyone out there thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, just be sure your significant other is on board and good things can happen. So I really want to thank you, Des. This is an incredible interview. Congratulations on all your success. And I wish you the best, your family the best. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Brian. And listen to everybody out there that sees this. Please, my cell and my email are on LinkedIn and their website. And if I love mentoring cops, I love taking them out of that level of insecurity sometimes that we get as we hit the private sector, and I'm more than happy to share and help and guide in any way. So feel free to put it out there, Brian. I think it's great. I think it's great what you and I have done with ourselves, and I think it's not impossible. It's not even close to impossible for anybody else. Just work, a little bit of vision, and risk. Take a little risk. So
thank you, Des. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brian. Have a great New Year.
Thank you.